I've been having some brake issues on my BMX, just like every BMX rider who rides brakes. So I thought I'd try something that I haven't tried before. I've seen a similar setup on a mountain bike. I've kind of started to do one side to see if it was even at all practical or doable. And so now I'm starting on the second side of my gyro lower. And I thought I'd show you guys. So what I'm attempting to do is use this hard line brake line from a car, hydraulic brake line, and it's hollow metal tubing. And what I've done is I've bent this piece here and run it all the way to the adjuster there. For one of the first steps, I've removed my lower gyro cable. In this case, I have a two-piece kink gyro cable. So it has two balls. It has the ball in the end that goes in the gyro rotor, and then it has the one that goes in on the brake arm. So I'm going to cut this one off. You can also use these shift cables. They have the same end on them, or ball end on them. These are a little thinner, so they're going to break more easily. So I'm using this kink one because I have it. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is get the plastic sleeve from inside of this cable. On this type of cable, which is traditional brake housing, it is wrapped around and the Teflon is inside there. And there are three layers. You have the outer red layer, you've got the metal layer, which is coiled around, and then you've got the Teflon, which is in the inside. So on the kink cable, we have this black protective coating on the outside. We have this weaved, really thin mesh stuff. We have the linear stuff, which goes lengthways with a slight twist to it. And then we have the Teflon inner. And you can get this out in a couple of ways. You might even be able to buy the inner part separately, but it's not common. One way is with a razor knife. You can cut through until you get to the strands that go lengthways. The only problem, my cat's attacking me. The only problem is that you're gonna have to wear some protective gloves or something, because the weaved part is gonna pick holes in your skin. It's quite uncomfortable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this to a bench grinder and grind along the outside until it kind of starts making sparks, and at that point I know that it's hitting the wire that goes lengthways, and then basically I can peel it apart. Ow, pokey. So instead of doing this several times and continuing to poke myself, I'm just going to go the full length, and then we'll pop it apart. It'll come apart a lot easier once it's done the full length. You want to make sure once you get to the point where it's sparking and you're hitting these lengthways pieces that you don't grind too much more or grind too aggressively, because the heat will cause this inner part to melt. Alright, now that we have it ground through most of the way, we can just grab it. You can see it comes apart fairly easily. And we pull out this green middle piece and we throw out the rest. You might not want to do this project if you have a cat. Just a thought. The tubing that I'm using is 3/16 hydraulic brake tubing from Automotive use. If you can find 5mm stuff, you can also use that, but it's not nearly as common. So hold that up, make sure we're a good length. You want the tubing to be slightly shorter, just a few millimeters, or like a 1/16 of an inch. My cat's over there watching, just waiting to attack. That's a garbage bag. Of course, he won't play with the things that I get him to try to play with. Alright, you can have this one, kitty. Now I'm going to use a utility knife just to take the burr out of the inside of the tube on both sides. We can slide our Teflon piece inside of the tubing now. You can see it fits pretty much perfectly. And if we've done this right, we'll have a little bit sticking out on each end. Oh, so you can see you got a tiny bit sticking out there and a tiny bit sticking out there. And now, in order to bend this, you can do it a couple of different ways. Okay, so I have a glass and I have the tubing, and what I did is put a piece of carpet on the floor. You want to make sure you're all the way to the end of the tubing with the glass, and then start pulling up on it. You can see I've got my bend started. We'll keep going. I think this one's actually turning out better than the other one. We need to take our inner cable that we had from before, and you need an adjuster. Put your cable in this way through the adjuster, and then we put the cable into the Teflon, and as we push on it, it might slide out the other end like it is on this one. So we can just kind of hold it with our thumb, push it back through. And once we get part way through, it'll then slide through easily. The cable is all the way through. We've got our adjuster on this side, and we've got an adjuster in the frame where it was previously. I'll put this part way in and screw the adjuster in. This adjuster is too long. I'm just using it as a test fitting piece right now, but I will either cut this adjuster shorter or find another adjuster, but yeah, that adjuster is too long. See, we have a very short adjuster now. Alright, and now in order to get this in the back piece, we just go like that. And this probably isn't going to be the perfect length because it does need another little bend to it. So I've basically got to put a little bit of a bend in it here, and what that'll do is bring it a little bit closer to the frame.
I've got this a little bit on the long side, and the reason for that is because I bent it a little bit different than I bent the other one. So very likely what I'm going to end up doing is cutting a little bit off of this end of the one that you guys saw me making, and then bend the first one that I did off camera, and then cut a bit off it as well. The fact that it goes straight when it comes out here isn't really necessary, and it's just basically going to end up causing problems in the long run. So yeah, I'm going to take care of that right now. Okay, so as you can see, I made this one fit. Part of the reason why I'm being very particular about the shape of the tubing is because I want it to run next to the frame. Unlike this cable, if it bends, this stuff will stay bent. So I'm going to end up taping this to the frame or fastening it to the frame in 2 or 3 places to make sure that it doesn't get snagged on stuff and bent. So what we did is heated up the plastic so that it swelled up a little bit, and now when the cable moves back and forth it won't slide out that way. We can do the same thing on the other side here, but what I'm actually going to do is leave this a little bit long, because just the way it works out in my case is the Teflon actually fits through the adjuster. So if we have it contacting the adjuster at all, that is going to allow for it to slide nice and freely. So I'm just going to leave mine a little bit long on that end. Alright, so it's coming together. Now what I'm going to use at the back here for NERPs on the cables is these Odyssey cable NERPs. This is what they look like. The cable goes through the center, and they actually even send an Allen key with them. So you put the cable through, and then you tighten down with the Allen key, and then you've got a cable end. They obviously will have to be adjusted, but I'll just show you guys really quickly. You just put them on the end of the cable, and then you snug this up, and then yeah, that acts as the end of your cable. It goes in there like that, and when you pull the brakes, it works. So the more observant of you may realize that this is going to cause some issues with adjustment, this hard piping, and the reason for that is when I try to turn my adjuster out here, I'm trying to move a metal pipe now that doesn't want to move too much. Basically what I'm getting at here is that the adjustment at this point is going to be fairly critical, because if I don't get it right, I don't have a whole lot of leeway when it comes to making corrections. Alright, now that I have it completely built, I assembled it on the bike and gave it a quick test, and it works perfectly. It feels great. The only thing I have left to do is actually tape it to the frame or tie wrap it to the frame. I think I will use tape. If I were to do it again, I would do 2 things differently. The first thing I would do differently is I would leave more of the plastic inner stuff sticking out so that it went all the way through my adjuster. And the other thing that I would do is I would cut the tubing a little bit longer, and I would make the bends a little bit more precise. So if I had just a slight bend in this first piece here, then it would curve in towards the frame. And yeah, those are basically the 2 things. So I have the inner cable out of an old brake lower, and then I have an adjuster that is cut. This is optional, but the reason why I cut it is because I don't want it sticking too far out of the tab that's on the frame, because there's more of a chance of it breaking the tab that's on the frame. So then we go down and we have the plastic inner sleeve that goes all the way through. We can see it sticking out here. We heated it on this end so that it kind of mushrooms out so that it doesn't slide down through this way. We have some 3/16 automotive brake tubing, hydraulic brake line. And back here I have an adjuster, an existing adjuster that's fairly long. And then I have an Odyssey NARP. And that's it. If you look closely, you can see that the grub screw is on the top side. Whatever side you tighten the grub screw down from, it's going to angle the cable. You can see that the cable is kind of shaped like a V, or there's an angle to it. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. Because the cable comes down at an angle and meets the brake arm like this, I'm going to put it in so that that angle matches the angle of the brake arm. If I were to put it in this way, I would be fighting against it, and not only that, it's going to work it back and forth at this joint, and it's going to be much more likely to break. So by putting it in this way, it has much more of a direct pull. So now that I have it built, I'll put it on. It goes on quite easily, the same way that a normal cable would go on. Screw the adjuster in. We have the cable in the lower gyro plate. Now we will thread the adjuster into the London mod, or in this case it's actually the kink version of the London mod. I did see one more thing that I want to do. If it's not obvious already, I am a little bit crazy. And what I want to do is, if you can see here, the cables are coming in on a downward slope, and then it goes straight across, and then it goes at a downward slope again. So I've basically got a friction point here where the cable is making basically an S. So what I need to do is grind, file, or mill the angle that this is into the mod so that the cable runs straight through. There you have it. After recording that last clip, I decided to take this piece off, and I filed it by hand until the angles matched. So now you can see the cable comes in and goes straight through at that angle. In total it took about probably 4 or 5 hours to do all the modifications on these brakes, but now the cable comes straight through this area, and it's not dragging at all on the adjuster, and it's got a straight shot from this point right through, so it should make for a better feeling brake and a more powerful brake. I know you guys can't tell from the video, but it's a very solid feel, not very much squish to it. Anyway, that's the end of this video, and I will see you guys next time.